The Duke of Sussex is in a total state of panic about his finances following the end of his short-lived media career, no further book offers, and absolutely no interest from the world of business in his services. So we've been told that the Prince has crunched the numbers and takes the view, quite rightly, that the Sussex's lifestyle is no longer sustainable, particularly following revelations that Meghan's jam, honey and flour sprinkles are sitting there gathering dust in a US warehouse, whilst Netflix, of course, pulled the plug.
Because there was anger there, and it wasn't anger at her, it was just anger, and she recognized it, she saw it.
On the morning of March 11th, 2026, a financial assessment prepared by Harry's legal and wealth management team in California was completed and placed in front of him. The number at the bottom of that assessment was $10 million, not $10 million in assets. $10 million that Harry needed to find, access and deploy within the coming weeks to cover the most immediate and urgent layer of the financial crisis that the collapse of his court case against the Daily Mail had produced. Legal costs owed to associated newspapers, fees owed to his own legal team, outstanding security and operational costs that had been accumulating while the lawsuit consumed his attention and his resources for years. $10 million due now. Harry read the assessment, and the question that had been forming in the back of his mind throughout the worst weeks of his life, a question he had been avoiding because the answer to it carried implications he was not ready to face, moved permanently to the front. Where does the money come from? Not in theory, not in the long term, right now, in the weeks immediately ahead. Before the legal consequences of a court case he had already lost became enforceable debts that his creditors could act on. The answer, when his advisors laid it out for him plainly on that March morning, was one that those around him describe as the moment Harry understood the full scale of what he was facing. There was no single source available that could cover $10 million without requiring a decision that permanently altered the shape of his life.
Harry, as we know, has been selling his soul for a long time now. It started with the book Spare, with the Harry and Meghan documentary on Netflix. But of course, don't forget those speaking engagements.
Today we are going to tell you the full story of that financial assessment and what it revealed. We are going to walk through every element of Harry's current financial picture, clearly, specifically, in plain language, so that you understand not just the $10 million number, but everything sitting behind it. We are going to take our time with this, because this is a story about the real practical consequences of years of choices, and you deserve to understand all of it properly. So settle in, and let's begin. To understand why $10 million constitutes an immediate crisis rather than a manageable challenge, you need to understand the full picture of Harry's financial situation as it stands in the final week of March 2026. Because the $10 million figure does not exist in isolation. It sits on top of a financial landscape that was already significantly distressed before the court case added its own layer of damage. Let's go through that landscape piece by piece, carefully, because each piece matters, and together they tell a story that the headline number alone does not capture. The first piece is the court case itself. Harry's lawsuit against Associated Newspapers Limited, the publisher of the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday, consumed several years of his life and a reported $15 million in legal fees paid to his lead attorney David Sherborne and the substantial team assembled around him. Sherborne is one of Britain's most celebrated and most expensive media lawyers. His involvement in a case of this complexity, over a period of years, produces fees at a level that most people would find almost impossible to comprehend as a running cost. Those $15 million in fees were paid over time from Harry's available funds. They are gone. They cannot be recovered from the court case outcome. They were the price of participation in a lawsuit that, whatever its merits as a matter of principle, produced the worst possible financial outcome. The court case also produced what lawyers call a costs order. This is the legal mechanism by which the losing party in a lawsuit is required to pay the winning party's legal costs. With Harry's central witness having admitted in open court that the documents he provided were fabricated, the verdict has gone against Harry. The Daily Mail's legal costs, the costs of defending themselves against a lawsuit that was built on fabricated evidence, are now Harry's obligation to pay. Those costs are estimated at approximately £11.5 million. At current exchange rates, that is roughly $14.5 million. Added to Harry's own fees, the total financial damage from the lawsuit alone approaches $30 million. The second piece is the private allowance. King Charles had been providing Harry with a private annual allowance of $2.7 million. This needs to be understood clearly because it is frequently misreported. This was not public money. It was not drawn from the sovereign grant, the funds Parliament allocates for the official functions of the monarchy. It was Charles's own private financial support for his son, his personal money given privately in the way that a father with the means to do so supports a child who is navigating difficult circumstances. Charles maintained that allowance through 5 extraordinary years. Through the Oprah interview, through the Netflix documentary, through the memoir, through the lawsuit, through the $59 million bill that Harry's team sent to the palace on March 4, 2026. Through all of it, the private support continued. Because Charles is a father, and the private financial thread was the last expression of that relationship that he kept intact. On March 11, 2026, following Harry's interview in which he publicly implied that his family was choosing not to help him while that private allowance was quietly ongoing, Charles eliminated it. Effective immediately. No provision for reinstatement. The thread was cut. $2.7 million annually. Gone. The third piece is the commercial income. When Harry and Meghan signed their Netflix deal in September 2020, the reported value was $100 million. That figure, when it was announced, seemed almost incomprehensible in the context of the royal family. $100 million for 2 people to produce content for a streaming platform. The financial independence they had described as their goal appeared at that moment to be genuinely within reach. But $100 million spread across several years of production costs, staff costs, legal costs, lifestyle costs, security costs, and the ordinary expenses of running 2 high-profile lives at the level Harry and Meghan maintained, diminishes faster than the headline number suggests. The productions the deal funded did not generate the renewal income that would have been the evidence of commercial viability. The documentary series about Harry and Meghan attracted large audiences because people wanted to watch the royal story unfold. The subsequent productions, Polo with Love Meghan, attracted significantly smaller audiences because those audiences had come for the royal story, not for Harry's equestrian interests or Meghan's lifestyle brand. Netflix, recognizing that the Sussex audience was a specific and limited audience rather than the broad general audience that major investment requires, declined to renew at comparable terms. In early March 2026, they formally ended their investment in As Ever, Meghan's lifestyle brand, removing another projected income stream from the Sussex financial picture. The Spotify deal, signed in 2021 for a reported $20 million, ended years earlier with a fraction of that value actually paid. By multiple accounts, the actual payment was approximately $2 million because the contractual deliverables were not met to the level the agreement required. The fourth piece is the estate and its running costs. The Montecito property in California cost $14 million when it was purchased. It is a substantial property requiring substantial ongoing maintenance, staff, utilities, upkeep, insurance. The costs of maintaining a property of that scale in one of the most expensive real estate markets in the world do not reduce simply because income has reduced. The estate is an asset, but it is an illiquid asset. It cannot be turned into cash quickly without the formal process of a property sale, which takes time and which carries its own costs. The fifth piece is the security. Harry's private security arrangements, the armed protection that the British courts confirmed the UK government was not required to provide, and that Harry has been funding privately ever since the Home Office declined to restore his publicly funded protection, costs approximately $2 million annually. $2 million every year, regardless of what else is happening financially, because the threat environment that requires that level of protection does not reduce simply because the income available to fund it has reduced. Now, add all of those pieces together. Hold the full picture in your mind at once. $30 million in lawsuit liability, $7 million annually in eliminated allowance, reduced commercial income from Netflix, Spotify, and book royalties, $14 million in illiquid estate assets carrying ongoing costs, $2 million annually in security costs. That is the financial landscape of late March 2026. And sitting inside that landscape as the most urgent and most immediate requirement is the $10 million that the March 21st assessment identified as needing to be addressed right now. If you are watching this channel for the first time and you want to follow this story as it continues to develop, because the financial consequences of what has happened to Harry in March 2026 are still unfolding and there is considerably more still to come, please subscribe right now. In January 2020, Harry and Meghan announced their intention to step back from royal duties and pursue financial independence. They were, at that point, two people with significant global profile, genuine commercial appeal, and the kind of name recognition that every marketing team in the world understands represents real value. The plan, as they described it, was to leverage that profile in service of causes they cared about while building commercial ventures that would fund their independence. The Netflix deal was the most visible expression of that plan. $100 million for their stories, their access, their name. What the plan did not fully account for was the specific nature of the audience that came with them. The people who followed Harry and Meghan out of the royal family were following a story, a drama. The story of two people who had left one of the most extraordinary institutions in the world and were building something different. That story had genuine audience value, but audiences that come for a story tend to stay for that story. When the story evolved, when the Netflix productions moved from the royal drama to polo documentaries and lifestyle shows, the core audience did not follow with the same enthusiasm. The commercial argument for a $100 million investment weakens considerably when the content it produces fails to hold the broad audience that justified the investment. The Spotify deal failed for related reasons. The Archetypes podcast, Meghan's show about the labels society places on women, had genuine merit as a concept. But it could not sustain the commercial argument for $20 million in fees when the listenership data showed that it was reaching a specific and relatively modest audience, rather than the mass platform that would justify the investment. Each of those commercial disappointments in isolation was manageable. Netflix's partial non-renewal was a setback but not a crisis. Spotify's early exit was disappointing but not catastrophic. The lifestyle brand's underperformance was concerning but not fatal. The problem is that they happened together, simultaneously. In the same period in which the lawsuit was consuming $15 million in legal fees and promising a settlement that never came. In the same period in which the private allowance, still flowing at $2.7 million annually, was quietly masking the full extent of the commercial underperformance. In the same period in which the security costs and the estate costs continued, regardless of what the income picture looked like. That is how the $10 million number arrived on Harry's desk on March 11, 2026. Not because of a single bad decision, because of the accumulated weight of several years of commercial underperformance, one catastrophically expensive legal action, and the removal of the private support that had been quietly preventing the full picture from becoming visible. Let's talk about Meghan, because what she has done in response to Harry's financial crisis is the dimension of this story that reveals the most about where things currently stand inside the Montecito household. The picture that has emerged from sources in the Los Angeles business and entertainment communities is not the picture of two people managing a shared crisis together. It is the picture of two people who are, in the most practical and legally meaningful sense, managing separate crises separately. Meghan's As Ever brand has lost its Netflix backing. That is a significant commercial setback for her independently. The show that was supposed to drive consumer awareness of the brand has ended. The Netflix investment that was supposed to provide both funding and platform has been withdrawn. The products, the jam, the flower sprinkles, the honey, the rosé, are sitting in a warehouse waiting for the kind of sustained consumer demand that the show was supposed to generate. In the face of that setback, Meghan has not retreated. She has accelerated. Her response to the loss of the Netflix partnership has been to intensify her independent commercial conversations. To position herself in the Los Angeles business community as a founder, someone who is building something independently, on her own terms, from her own resources. To engage with brands and investors and commercial partners who are interested in what she can offer independently of the Sussex story. But the effect is the same. Harry needs $10 million. Meghan has resources, and the resources are being structured in a way that makes them unavailable for Harry's debt. That reality, whatever it means for the personal relationship, and we will come to that, is one of the most significant developments in the Sussex story in March 2026. Let's take a brief pause here. We are at the midpoint of this story, and the section that follows covers the specific options available to Harry and what each one would actually require him to give up. If you are finding this as important as we do, and this is genuinely one of the most consequential financial moments in the Sussex story since they left the royal family, please share this video with someone who is following these events. A friend, a family member, someone who would want to understand the full picture. It takes just a moment. Thank you. Now let's talk about the options. Because there are options, they are not comfortable options, and they are not the options of a man with many good choices available to him. But they are real, and laying them out honestly is more useful than simply describing a crisis without the context of what can actually be done about it. The first option is the Montecito estate. The property is worth, at current California real estate valuations in that particular coastal market, somewhere between $20 and $25 million. A sale would generate proceeds that could cover the $10 million immediate requirement, pay down a substantial portion of the remaining court case liability, and leave residual funds to work with. From a purely financial standpoint, selling the estate is the most obvious solution. It addresses the immediate crisis and creates breathing room for the longer-term reconstruction of Harry's financial position. But it is also the option that carries the highest personal cost. The Montecito house is not just a property, it is the physical centerpiece of the life Harry and Meghan chose to build when they walked away from everything they had known. It is the place where their children have grown up. It is the address that represents, in the most concrete possible way, the California independence they described so compellingly in those early interviews and in the productions they made. Selling it means acknowledging, in the most public and irreversible way possible, that the California chapter is over or transforming into something significantly different from what was promised. It means accepting that the financial independence they said they were building has not materialized in the way they described. It means doing in 2026 what they said in 2020 they were choosing freedom to avoid. Sources close to Harry say the estate question has been discussed, that he has asked his advisors to assess what a sale would produce and what the timeline would look like. But that as of the writing of this script, no decision has been made, and those who know Harry describe his relationship to the house as something more than practical, something that makes the decision harder than the numbers alone would make it. The second option is a new commercial deal. Harry's name retains commercial value in certain specific contexts. The Invictus Games, the international sporting competition for wounded and injured service personnel that he founded in 2014, now in its 11th year of operation, is the commercial asset with the most genuine and broadly held credibility attached to it. Sponsors who associate themselves with Invictus are associating themselves with something that people across the political and cultural spectrum respect. That kind of association has real market value. There are also commercial opportunities that Harry has historically declined or approached selectively. Speaking engagements with major corporations and organizations. Personal appearance agreements, brand partnerships in categories adjacent to the military and veterans themes that Invictus represents. Content deals structured around the Invictus story rather than the Sussex story. The financial pressure of March 2026 changes the calculation around some of those opportunities, not overnight. The process of identifying, negotiating, and closing commercial deals takes time that the immediate crisis does not fully allow for. But medium-term, a properly structured commercial strategy built around Invictus and the veterans' work, rather than around the grievance narrative that has characterized so much of Harry's public output since 2020, represents the most sustainable path to financial recovery. The question is whether Harry is willing to engage with commercial partners in the ways and at the terms that the current landscape offers, which are not the terms of 2020 or 2021, when the Sussex name was at its commercial peak. The terms available in March 2026 reflect a name that has been through a significant period of reputational damage and commercial disappointment. The deals that are available are real, but they require a pragmatism about their terms that Harry has not always demonstrated. The third option is the one his advisors tell him is not viable, but that he keeps returning to. His advisors are uniform in their assessment. The Palace's position, hardened through the March 4th bill rejection, the March 9th return plan rejection, the March 12th interview and the March 13th allowance elimination, is not one that has space for a financial approach in the current environment. Approaching the Palace right now for financial help would produce a rejection that would be more damaging than the present situation, because it would confirm publicly that Harry had reached the point of requesting help from the family he has spent years attacking. Harry has not approached the Palace, but the fact that his advisors feel the need to tell him it is not viable suggests that the thought is active enough to warrant addressing directly. That instinct to reach back toward the people and the institution that represented, for all its difficulties and all its costs, the most financially secure version of his life, is one of the most human things about his current situation. The impulse to go home when everything else has become difficult is not weakness. It is one of the most fundamental human responses to crisis. But going home is not available to him right now, and the advisors are right that reaching for it would make things worse rather than better. The fourth option is the one that requires the least financial creativity, but the most personal honesty. A complete financial restructuring, starting from what exists rather than from what was expected. Selling the estate, reducing the security footprint to the minimum required rather than the premium level currently maintained. Downsizing the operational infrastructure around both Harry and Meghan's professional activities. Living, in other words, at a level that the actual income, rather than the projected or hoped-for income, can sustain. This is the option that financial advisors describe as the most rational and the most sustainable. It requires giving up a great deal of what the California life has looked like from the outside, but it produces a financial position that is stable rather than precarious, one that can be built from rather than one that requires constant emergency management. That acknowledgement is available to Harry. The people who know him well say it is available, but it requires a form of honesty about the gap between the story and the reality that Harry has not yet demonstrated he is ready for. Now let's talk about what Meghan's separation strategy means for the marriage, because we have been approaching this question from the financial side, but it also has a personal dimension that those who know both of them are beginning to speak about with increasing directness. Harry and Meghan built their entire public identity around the idea of a partnership, a genuine, equal, total partnership. Two people who had chosen each other over everything else, over family, over duty, over country, and whose shared commitment was the foundation on which everything else they built rested. That foundation is being tested in March 2026 in a very specific way, not by external pressure, which they have faced before and which has, in previous periods, served to unite them against a common target, but by divergence, by the fact that their responses to the same crisis are pulling in different directions. Harry's response has been a kind of paralysis, a stillness that those who know him describe as the stillness of someone who has exhausted his usual repertoire of responses. The legal action, the interview, the book, the proposal, the demand, and found that none of them have produced the outcome he needed. A man sitting with the full weight of a situation he cannot currently see his way out of. Meghan's response has been motion, acceleration, the doubling down on independent commercial activity, the legal restructuring of her assets, the forward-looking positioning that says, whatever is happening around me, I am building towards something. Those two responses, stillness and motion, withdrawal and acceleration, create a particular kind of distance in a marriage, not the distance of a disagreement or a conflict, the distance of two people whose instincts in a crisis are taking them in opposite directions. And when the crisis in question is partly financial, and when one person's motion involves protecting her assets from the other person's debts, the distance becomes something more than emotional. It becomes structural. People close to the couple are not yet willing to use the word separation when describing the current state of the marriage, but they are using words that hover close to it. Words like divergence and independent trajectories and separate chapters. Words that describe two people who are still technically in the same marriage, but who are operating with an increasing degree of independence from each other's situations. This is one of the most detailed and most honest accounts of Harry's financial situation that we have put together on this channel, and we are genuinely grateful to everyone who stayed with it through all 35 minutes. If it gave you something to think about, and I believe it will have, because the questions at the heart of it are ones that most of us have faced in some form in our own lives, please leave a comment below. Tell us which option you believe Harry will choose. Tell us whether you think Meghan's financial separation is the right decision, or whether it signals something more serious about the marriage. We read every single comment, and your perspective genuinely shapes what we cover next. And if you are not yet subscribed, please do it now. Click subscribe, turn on your notifications, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you. We will see you soon.